Kristi Broom from Degreed. She's the VP of operations there and has 25 plus years of experience in learning and talent, including time at Citi. She's designed and executed learning technology strategy and solutions. And as you'll clearly see, expertise lies in driving strategy through execution and making the complex simple. So today she's going to be talking to us about skills of the future and today's talent. So everybody, please join me and welcome her. Go ahead, take it away. The floor is all yours.
Thanks, Bobby, and thanks everyone for joining today. I'm thrilled to share a conversation with you about skills and skill strategy and how we identify and use skills for maximum impact in the future in our businesses. So I believe we can see my slides, and so I'm going to start us off here. So as Bobby mentioned, I spent really 25 years working in large organizations within the L&D functions, realizing that, that the future of learning needed to evolve and shift. And so in both of the companies that I worked at, really led teams that were innovating and driving the future of learning. And it was through that work that I met Degreed. And so I'm thrilled to have spent the last 4.5 years here, both in a client engagement role. So helping our clients to implement Degreed and use it for maximum impact at their organizations, and then shifting over because of skills to a role within our product team. So it's my pleasure now to be able to aggregate and share all of the great work that our product teams are doing to evolve our product suite across Degreed. So with that, skills are at the heart of everything that we do, and I'm thrilled to have this conversation with you today. So if you're checking your inbox, frankly, or watching the industry news in any way, shape, or form, you can hardly read anything without having a conversation or a discussion or just ingesting information about skills and skill data. They've certainly, that the conversation exists because of their importance in driving the world forward. In fact, we know that skills are changing more rapidly than ever before. This research shows by industry, a cut of some research we did last year to identify the state of skills and endangered skills within the marketplace. And that the yellow bar is the longest time frame, but it's only 5 years. And many of the people surveyed believe that their skills will be obsolete within a year. That's scary. That's scary if we're not continuing to identify new skills and upskill our organizations. We also know that the employee experience does not really connect skills to opportunities. So if we start on the left-hand side with demand, as employees, we're looking for guidance on the skills that we should and could be building to create value for the organization. Makes sense, right? As employees, we want to be doing the things that will help our businesses to thrive. However, only 17% of employees created a plan to develop specific skills with their manager, to develop their specific skills. Pretty bleak. Thinking about development, this summit has been focused on development, and certainly, providing the resources and connections for individuals to build in-demand skills on their own and with each other is important as well. But 56% of us took no live classes or online courses at work over the last year. So we're not truly accessing that development. Supply, the feedback to quantify skills, build good habits, and visualize progress. Only 39% of workers got regular feedback on their performance. And then here's where it really comes into play. So why do any of us build our skills? Why do we learn? Why do we try to grow? It's really to achieve additional opportunities, right? Whether that's through projects, through stretch assignments, or, a role change. And so that's really kind of the outcome that we expect as we develop ourselves, as we upskill ourselves. But our research shows really only 31% of workers were offered projects or other development opportunities. So if this center circle is what we aspire to, clearly there's a disconnect in how we're actually able to achieve those outcomes, or the actions that we're taking in order to allow employees to achieve those outcomes. One final just piece of research, hopefully if you're not motivated already, this will motivate you. The PwC research over the last several years has shown CEOs, so not chief learning officers, not the head of HR, these are the CEOs who run our companies. 80% of them say that the lack of key skills is a serious threat to their company's growth. And without key skills, we can't innovate, costs are rising, quality is impacted, unable to pursue market opportunities, missing growth targets. So our CEOs are worried about this upskilling crisis, right? It's why each of us can hardly go a day without checking our inboxes, looking at industry news, and seeing the skills conversation among the research. And so we know there's a business problem, right? We know that there is a challenge around availability of skills. We know that the pace of technology advancements, if this past year has taught us nothing, it's that, we need to adapt and grow, and technology is a big part of that. Dynamic market conditions, competitive market, social responsibility concerns, P&L management and targets, and then low employee engagement. I think if you think about your organizations and which among these lists are challenges for you, I think we all probably check many of these boxes as being challenges that we all face within our organizations. And so really we're hoping to provide a solution to the problem through skills. And at their highest level, skills can enable social responsibility, because even as jobs shift or responsibilities shift or people shift companies, we can help employees obtain durable employment and help career elasticity so they can survive and thrive despite the conditions that exist outside of them. We also help organizational durability, right? So help our companies move through and withstand crises, and learn to change, learn to rebound even after setbacks. On the right-hand side, business performance, probably not a big surprise to anybody. If we grow our skills, we're going to help the business. And then organizational adaptability. So as these needs arise within our company, being able to demonstrate and quickly adapt based on that skills approach. And so how do we get started, right? So I've painted this really bleak picture, hopefully, and none of it is a surprise to you. Maybe some of the data points were, and hopefully now you're motivated to get started to think about skills as really the foundation. And why do we do that, right? I think, as we have looked through all of the slides we've experienced so far, all of those present a problem. I think what we're finding is that our solutions are not nimble enough, right? And so if you think about a typical job today and a typical job description with many, many responsibilities, if you think of competency models today that help us outline all of the competencies, all of the characteristics that make someone successful in their role within each of our organizations. Those things are important to provide structure, but they're not nimble. It would be like building a structure out of Legos, right? Let's just say an airplane out of Legos, and then expecting that airplane to shift into a house, without actually thinking about the Lego blocks as the components that create that shift. Building a skill strategy looks at skills like those Lego blocks, right? The components that if we take it apart and look at the pieces that would help us to become that Lego house in this example, we can build and achieve that Lego house more quickly than trying to just transform that airplane into a house. And so here is kind of the heart of what we're going to talk about. So if you remember nothing else, this pragmatic approach to building a skill strategy is really what I'd like for you to take away. I think it's if you can do this, you'll be able to add value and overcome some of those challenges we spoke about. And so 4 steps, it all starts with business strategy, as do all of the things that we do, but really understanding deeply, what does that business strategy mean? And dissecting it, trying to pull it down to the level of something that is consumable and something that we can use to build. Once we know that business strategy, we have to have an execution focus. So we have to be driven toward action. And this is important because in these last couple of steps, it's going to get complex, right? So we have to know the business strategy. We have to have an action orientation, right? We have to know what are the critical few things that people must do to execute the business strategy. If we think again about that job description, every job description I've read or created for that matter has a list of 10 or 15 responsibilities, right? As we think about an action focus and execution focus, what we really want to think about is the critical few. So out of that job description, what are the 2 or 3 things that are really going to drive action? In a skill strategy, what are the critical things that will allow us to achieve our business strategy? Once we have that execution focus, we know those critical actions, then we're going to look at the critical skills. And here's where I see organizations sometimes get challenged, right? Because we want to be really inclusive and comprehensive in our skill strategy. We want to list things that like communication and technology awareness and a drive towards learning and curiosity and innovation and change management and strategy and all of those things that likely are table stakes for any of us to be successful in our roles. And so what I would encourage you at this stage is if they are table stakes, don't list them, right? Because what we're really looking for is identifying, again, the critical few skills that will differentiate my ability to help the business achieve its strategy versus Bobby's ability to help the organization achieve its strategy. And if we're doing it right, my critical skills will be different than Bobby's because we have different contributions to make, right? So as we identify those critical skills, again, focusing on the key skills, the critically few key skills that will help me or any individual in the organization help the organization move forward. Once we have that critical few, then we focus on skilling efforts. So we look at the critical few skills for a role. We look at, area of strength or need today, and then we focus attention on building additional strength in those key areas. So again, all starts with business strategy, have to keep an action orientation, identifying the critical skills, focused attention, and then continuing through the cycle of these last 3 as long as our business strategy is still relevant. If business strategy changes, we move back to the beginning, right? And so this is a continual process that we're iterating on frequently, right? So as we think about some tips, remember to plan for success and value. Understand and know the marketplace in which you're operating. Again, the marketplace may drive a change in business strategy or a change in the marketplace rather, may drive a change in business strategy. And so understanding that so we can go back through the cycle at the appropriate time. Take one bite at a time, focus on the critical few, build a skills inventory, and then determine business outcomes. And so here's what it might look like, right? So this is a sample strategy statement where the business strategy is to become the first to move from physical to digital payments. So that's the business strategy lined out in a simplified form here over a 3-year period. So that's step 1, right? Then we're going to take that action orientation and identify the critically few actions that need to happen in order for us to achieve the business strategy. So design new products, move quickly, prepare for merchant acceptance, and gain issuer support. And then finally market the products to consumers. Out of that, we then drive the critical few skills that will allow us to achieve these activities, right? So digital programming languages, design thinking, fluency, product knowledge, storytelling, and digital marketing, right? So again, this is simple. As you think about your skills strategy, it really should fit on one page, right? Again, the skills, as you look across the breadth of roles in your organization, may be different, right? The key actions may be different based on the roles and departments and functions within your organization, but they should all be this short, right? They should all be easy to digest, fit on one page, simple to understand, simple to articulate. And so, as we think about our role as HR, talent, learning professionals, we really need to think about whether we're ready to provide the strategic advice that help organizations compete and win. And that strategic advice is really based on this skill strategy that we outlined. Once we have that strategy, then we have to put it into action, right? Then we have to apply it to people within our organization. And that's where we think about building a skills inventory and understanding the skill profile of every individual within our organization and the collective skill profile across our companies. And that starts with determining your supply. What do I mean by that? I mean, as we look at those critical skills, understanding who in your organization has them. That's your supply, right? Who in the organization has market knowledge, has digital fluency, right? Really going through and identifying where you have skill matches. And from there, you can quantify your demand, right? Does everybody need to upskill in a certain area? Are we lacking in certain functions? Can we take an individual by individual approach so that we can achieve the skills targets that we've laid out? From the demand, identifying the audience, and then determining their skill proficiency level. So at this first step, we've really said, do they have the skill? At this last step, we're saying at what level, right? Are they a beginner in that skill and we need them to be a more advanced? Or are they more advanced? We're really looking for everybody to have just a beginner's level knowledge. And so maybe we can take that person with advanced level knowledge, advanced proficiency, and use them to help mentor or upskill everybody in the department so that we can increase proficiency across the board. So what do we hope to get from a business perspective out of all of this? How are we going to measure success? In this case, if we go back to that example of digital payments, we might measure in time to market. We might look at quality of the initial design compared to what we went to market with to kind of measure our innovative capabilities, measure, how we're going to go through the revision cycle. We might look at sales pipeline, and we might look at acceptance locations, perhaps number of views as we digitize our payment methodology. So what about that employee experience? Remember that cycle that we looked at the beginning, looking at demand and development and opportunity, right? And some of those dismal stats that we know that that's important, but we don't always connect our strategy to that employee experience. And that's why we saw some of those disconnects. And so when we think about improving that cycle, right? Improving the results that we achieve from it. These are some steps that we can take to help our employees become more nimble, more agile, help increase their employment or their career elasticity, especially as we consider social responsibility, organizational durability, career durability, regardless of the environmental, the market conditions that are taking place at the time. So for each individual, coaching them through a similar strategy as what we've talked about already. So looking at an individual, encouraging them to seek out and outline the skills that they have. And here's an opportunity to be broad. So for all of the advice I've given about identifying the critical few, when we're talking to employees about their own skill profile, we want them to be expansive. We want to think about the skills that they gain at work, the skills that they might gain through volunteering activities, parenting activities, the way that they manage their home, their personal life, all of the skills that we gain through all of those experiences. So being expansive in this first list from an employee perspective, and then thinking about the skills that an individual might need for the future. I'll show you in just a minute what some of those future skills might be based on that research study that I mentioned earlier. So again, looking at skills that are transferable into the future, skills that are elastic, right? All of those things that I encouraged you not to consider in the beginning because they're table stakes. So innovation, change management, strategy, communications, technology aptitude, right? All of those things are durable, right? They're elastic. Regardless of what the technology is, we need to have an aptitude for it, right? We talked about experiences, right? So considering work, but considering all of the other things that we do in our lives that are helping us to build skill. And then looking at a willingness to learn. So looking at, how and where and when are individuals learning, both inside of courses. Again, we saw in the first slide that only 56% of employees took a course last year or enrolled in a course. But all of the other ways that we learn, right? I often use the analogy of, if I want to cut an avocado, I am not going to seek out an avocado cutting course, right? I'm going to look it up on YouTube, right? So looking at all of those ways that we learn and willingness to continue to do so. Thinking about contribution and performance at the current level within the current role. Where does the individual want to be 5 years from now, 10 years from now, maybe even 12 months from now, right? And then interest and passion. All of those considerations will help us coach employees through employment elasticity. And as we do that, as we find the right match for individuals, we help the organization move forward in its strategy as well. And so as I prepare to wrap up, this is a bit of an eye chart. I will linger on it for a moment, and I will tell you that if you're interested in learning more, our State of Skills report has the full level of detail. So really, we were looking at, what are the skills that we should focus on both now and as we think about future focused skills, right? So we've got a number of charts in that research report that look at skills by industry, by role, by function, by country. And so, really interesting as we think about the mix of technological skills, that's our blue box, right? What we traditionally would call soft skills, right? Or those human skills. Some people call them power skills, right? And then those skills that really are going to be long lasting and more role specific. Those are those that are colored in yellow on this box. And so we're really trying to unlock the power of employees by enabling skill development that will help them to future-proof their careers. As we do that, again, and as we work through all of the other employee functions to retain them, to engage them, hopefully that career development is with our organizations as well. In fact, we found that in some research that organizations that help employees to develop faster, who have been promoted within organizations, they are promoters of their organizations. Those that help employees to adapt within the company, so move to another team or another function like I have at Degreed. Also promoters. And then, those that have left for a new company, our promoters actually are staying longer. That's what this last box is saying, is that promoters are more likely to stay with the company than look for a new opportunity outside of it. So our biggest opportunities as we think about taking this skill strategy forward, right? Individuals want learning that aligns to skill gaps, right? So how do we know what skill gaps are? We have to go through the work of understanding supply, understanding demand, understanding where that gap is, so that we can help individuals to align the learning that they're consuming to their individual skill gaps. Then relate that to their career goals, help them to become career elastic, right? Employees want assessments to find out where they need to improve, and they want opportunities to apply what they've learned within organizations. Again, thinking about that cycle we started with, right? Opportunities to apply. Projects was one of the areas where we were weak. We don't always give people the opportunities to apply their skills. It doesn't have to be big and grand. It could be as much as, could you run this next meeting to focus on time management, organization, communication, managing conflict, right? Even depending on the subject of the meeting. And then many additional opportunities as well. And so as we think about this, this skill strategy must be owned and nurtured by everybody. It's not just the job of the human resources or the learning department. Employees obviously have a big role to play in understanding their own skills gaps, and how they can contribute to their own upskilling to benefit the organization. And then we know the role that leaders and managers play in setting direction, and then managers helping to coach on a day-to-day basis so employees can really achieve their upskilling goals. So Bobby, I know we just have a couple of minutes for questions, but I'm happy to take any that have come in from the audience.
Okay, yeah, we'll go ahead. We do just have just a couple of quick minutes, and I have a couple I wanted to ask you. So I know we've reviewed how to build your own incubator of emerging skills, how to define and measure what skills the business has now, and identifying what they're going to need next. But I want to kind of circle back all the way to the beginning. How do you know where to start when developing the strategy?
Yeah, it's a great question. Thanks for asking it. Again, it ties back to business strategy, but I think we know that, right? I think the key advice that I would give is identify those critical few, right? As you think about that business strategy, think about the differentiators. So again, take those table stakes items off the table and think truly about what are those critical 5 or 6 actions, 5 or 6 skills that are going to drive you forward. That's your skill strategy.
Okay, so this might be difficult to narrow down specifically, but going forward, because I know this is a continuous process, how do you evaluate and adjust the strategy going forward? How do you determine that, measure that? What do you do?
Yeah, it's a great question. More frequent is better. So when you think about typically our performance cycles run on an annual basis, right? Some companies have moved to doing performance cycles twice a year, maybe quarterly. Skill strategy should be at least quarterly, if not more frequently, right? When we think about that cycle of demand and development and projects and opportunities, that happens frequently. If we're not having conversations about skill building with individuals on a monthly or weekly basis, we're going to be caught behind. We're going to be caught behind, right? And so the skill strategy needs to be reviewed and adjusted at least quarterly, if not more frequently than that. And if you've got 5 or 6 items, that should be easy to do.
Okay, so I know that data is probably going to be coming from multiple sources, going to multiple different sources. How do you trust it? I mean, how do you know which data might be accurate, inaccurate? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a great question as well. What we're finding is that when we use kind of signals coming out of the data to amplify or center around a specific item, then that data becomes more trustworthy, right? So there is no single learning item or assessment that is the silver bullet. It doesn't exist. But when we look at a multitude of them, right, a number of data points together, typically they will converge, and they will amplify each other. And that's when you start to trust that data.
Got it. Okay, great stuff. Love the insight into identifying, the skills that the business needs next, and the best ways to cultivate all that. Love the charts, and I'm sure people will be reaching out to you afterwards to discuss those. Those were a little bit in depth, but great information. So thanks so much again for joining us, Kristi.
Thank you.